To the Freddie Kissoon show. Bring it!
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, so an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right.
Yes.
The right that someone has. All of our rights exist in context.
What's the context of a second medical opinion?
Because pleasant Wednesday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. We're on Ramkarran Street, and on Ramkarran Street lives Ralph Ramkarran, and the street was named after the father of Ralph Ramkarran, Boise Ramkarran, an enduring name that would always be an enduring name in the People's Progressive Party. Ralph Ramkarran needs no introduction. A former stalwart of the PPP and long-serving Speaker of the National Assembly, not to mention he's one of the longest-serving attorney at law in Guyana and heads the law firm, a historic law firm of Cameron and Shepard. Ralph Ramkarran is an encyclopedia when it comes to political, legal, and constitutional matters. So we will start off on his forte, law and constitution, and ask him if he could break down the intricacies of the Vincent Alexander drama, in which Alexander is saying, when he was appointed 18 years ago as a GECOM Commissioner, it was an appointment for life. There is no agency that can remove a GECOM Commissioner. That is in the context of the widespread or the ubiquitous talk that there is a new opposition party and they have the right to name their new GECOM Commissioners. Ralph, thanks for having us into your home. Very nice home. You have any thoughts about what Alexander is saying and if there are some validity or invalidity to that?
Well, thank you for having me, gentlemen. Alexander is right. There is no provision in the Constitution that would allow the leader of the opposition to remove him from office. That's the simple answer. So he's there for life unless unless the regular principles for removal of constitutional officers from positions are invoked in his case, or in any case. Those are like, you have to have a complaint, a tribunal has to be established, he has to have a hearing, and so on. That wasn't always the case. I mean, I think for your viewers to understand the situation, that wasn't always the case. It wasn't always the case that members of the Elections Commission could not be removed. Prior to the Carter reforms, the Constitution provided that members are to retire at some point around the elections, either when the elections were over or the new government was established. There's a reason for that. Because in theory, the government could have changed, and the government had 2 members and the opposition had 1. So if the government were to change, the new government, which would have been the opposition, would then have 2 members. And then the opposition, which would have been the previous government, would have only 1. So it was necessary to provide for a change for the members of the Constitution, for the term of office to end at election time or just after the elections. During the period of the Carter reforms, something went wrong. I can't figure out quite what, but something went wrong, and I'm sure it was an accident, I'm sure it was not deliberate, but something went wrong that resulted in the members of the Elections Commission not in the people who nominated the members of the Elections Commission not having the capacity to remove them, or that they did not, or that they were not required to resign at the end of elections. Maybe the reason is the mistake occurred is because each government and opposition are entitled to 3 members each. So the composition doesn't change, the numbers don't change. It's only the names might change. So that was omitted from the Constitution. I think accidentally, or there wasn't enough thought given to it, or whatever the reason. But Alexander remains, and the other members can remain there for as long as they want. The members were nominated by the PPP in government most of the time, most of the period, have changed from time to time. But the PNC members have not changed for quite a while.
Alexander said he's been there for 18 years.
Yeah.
I would like to invoke some of your deeper legal thoughts. Do you think in front of a judge that technical arguments can result in a decision that says these commissioners could be removed?
No.
Like an argument that says that you outlined applies when it's PNC, PPP, but now there's a completely new party and the commissioners are beholden to the parties. Is there a technical argument that you think that you could envisage being made with respect to
No,
that?
I don't think so.
You don't?
The Constitution has to provide for removal. It doesn't provide for removal by the people who nominated, or the person holding the post of the nominator. That doesn't enable the removal of the member. No.
All right. Let's continue on the same vein, but let's step aside from the constitutional matters and talk about our politics and morality and stuff like that. Do you believe that they should resign and allow the new?
Of course,
Okay.
of course they should. All over the Western world, that is. It doesn't happen as much in Guyana, but when you have a political post, when you're appointed to a political position, or a position that has some politics behind it, when the person who would nominate, when the politics change, even if your own government is returned, you offer your resignation.
And you think that is a decent thing to do?
Yes, that is the proper thing to do. You offer your resignation, and you might be renominated. I remember one famous case. The actor who's a weightlifter, the German guy, I can't remember his name now. The governor of California.
Oh, Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger. He was at an obscure position. He was nominated by Bill Clinton on an athletics committee dealing with sports, athletics, and sports and exercising, health. And George Bush won the election. And he offered his resignation. He's a Republican. Schwarzenegger was a Republican.
Yeah.
And he offered his resignation. It was big in the papers. I don't know why they highlighted it, but he offered his resignation and he was reappointed. Now, his own government, his own party is president, and he was reappointed. Now, that's the normal thing to do. You know, all the members of the commission should offer their resignation. All 6 should offer their resignation.
You are a dictionary in politics, being it so long. What you make of the phenomenal results of the 2025 election in the context of the absolute diminution of the PNC?
It was a shock to everybody. I'm sure your language alone suggests that you were shocked too. It has to do with leadership, you know, and leadership choices, what choices the leadership makes. Aubrey Norton is a more aggressive, has a more aggressive type of leadership, you know. It's symbolized by the refusal to shake hands. That's the symbol of it, a more confrontational, direct approach to leadership. That's one aspect. The second aspect is that the marginalization and discrimination policy, which was the forefront of the PNC's campaign, those two things have not worked in their favor. And it seemed to me that PNC's members or supporters have sensed that Guyana is moving forward. Now, this is great. Let me just say that there on the line that there's still a great deal of poverty in Guyana, and the oil wealth hasn't trickled down far enough and fast enough. So people are still looking forward for something, notwithstanding the great advances that have been made in health, education, infrastructure, and so on. So I think PNC supporters are looking for something, looking to benefit, not in a bad way, but they're looking for benefits from this growing economy, which everybody's talking about, both in Guyana and outside of Guyana. And I believe that they do not see the current attitude or the approach or the policies of the PNC is one that will give them that. I don't know if they see that in Azruddin Mohammed, but that's the only explanation I can come up with, that if people leave you, they leave you for something. What is that something? That's all I can figure out.
When Anog, the leader Anog Mark France, and the executive at that time decided to make an agreement with WIN, within, I would say, seconds, in the way our time fleet is passing so quickly, almost within seconds, you announce that you have resigned and you are not part and party to that. Can you take us through that?
Well, Mark France, Mark had spoken to me some time before, I think weeks before, that he consulted with me in relation to their proposal to link up with WIN. The details were not clear, but he wanted to link up with WIN. And I told him that I did not think it was a good idea, and that if Anog does not have the capacity to contest the elections, it should not contest, but don't join with WIN. Because the leadership of WIN, that's the reason. So when it was announced that he had joined, it was not a surprise. It was a surprise to me because they didn't tell me beforehand, but I knew it had been pending. It wasn't as as big a shock as it would have been if I hadn't been consulted. So I was prepared to right away to say, and I sent a message to Mark privately, but I also put a message on Facebook. That is why it appeared instantaneous.
Yeah. And I want to ask you this question. If it has the possibility of making you feel a bit uncomfortable, if you are, just say and we'll move on. And it has to do with your with you leaving the PPP. Based on my reading, your father literally lived in the PPP, and then you came up and you spent years, reached probably the higher echelon of leadership in the PPP. And then for me, a young person hearing that you were leaving the PPP, I felt sad. What would bring you to such a decision after having this labor of love in the PPP for so long?
Well, that issue has been litigated quite a lot, but there were problems had emerged between me and the leadership long before I left. There were several issues which had arisen, and the issues occurred over a period of several years, a period of 5 years before I left, 5 or more years before I left. One issue or another, which resulted in some degree of confrontation. One was the removal of the advertisement from Stabroek News. That was a very big issue which we had high talk about. Another one was a motion in the parliament which I allowed, a motion by Winston Murray, and other stuff like that I can't all remember. All came at one time. And then in 2008, at the 2008 Congress, I normally came at normally in the top 10, but in the upper part of the top 10 in the votes.
Yeah.
Nobody ever canvassed against me, nobody ever canvassed for me. I just... In 2008, I came down in the 20s. There were 35 members who were elected. I came down right down in the 20s. And immediately after, the day after, a report from Stabroek News, I don't remember her name now. I know the name, but age. Rang me up and commiserated, because she said that she was downstairs and she heard people in the downstairs walking about telling other people not to vote for me. So there was a big campaign which brought me down. That was 2008. That was very devastating. Then in 2011, Donald Ramkarran was selected as the candidate. And I had offered myself up to the PPP. And that was, I didn't, the party chose Ramkarran. I declined at the very end, because the reason I declined was I didn't want it to be, I knew I was going to lose. I knew I was going to get a very small number of votes. And I didn't want that to be used against me, So I withdrew from the contest. Then, so the contest had left some bitterness and some, hard feelings. I spoke to Ramkarran at the time, and I told him that I'm not going to be able to campaign, but I will support you in whatever way you wish. He was appreciative of the conversation, and that, he understood why I couldn't campaign. So then I resumed after the election. This was 2011. After the elections, I resumed activity within the PPP. And I was writing for the Mirror when Janet Jagan died. I had begun to write for the Mirror and had utilized her spot in the newspaper. She used to write in the middle page. So I wrote an article on the corruption issue. And it was a completely innocent article. It had no sting in it. It wasn't accusatory of anybody. As a matter of fact, it was complimentary to the government because I had pointed out that the government had done some things since it came to office, and I listed them. You know, the audit reports and so on, which were missing during the PNC times, about half a dozen or so. They fixed all of that. They set up new rules for procurement and so on. So I pointed that out. But I also said, look, corruption is now increasing because of the more money which was being spent. I pointed out that under the Hoyt government, $2 billion was being spent on infrastructure. Under the current government at this time, the 2012, $20 billion are spent annually. So the opportunities for corruption are vast, are bigger, and therefore it requires some more measures to prevent corruption. I didn't say what the measures were. I met Ramkarran, who by then was president. So I met him at a function, and I said, look, I wrote this article, and this is what I said. The article didn't come out as yet. It was coming out in a few days in the Mirror. I wrote this article, and this is what I said. He said, oh, that's okay. Now, at a meeting of the executive committee, I was attacked very viciously for writing the article. And said I shouldn't write about corruption involving the PPP or may involve the PPP. And the viciousness of the attack was so intense that prompted me to leave. Actually, I walked out. I didn't leave. I just walked out. But it was a Friday. Executive meetings were held on Friday. By Saturday morning, I thought that was the end. And I resisted all efforts to reel me back in. As a matter of fact, I knew that if I changed my mind, I knew that if I delayed, I would probably change my mind and go back into a situation where this can happen again, you know. So I issued my resignation the next day. Little story, I contacted the editor of Starbuck News and I said, what is your press time? Why? I have a story. He said, mid-afternoon. I said, latest time, 4 o'clock. I said, he said, what is it about? I said, an important person is resigning from an important organization. He said, send it anytime. Keep the headline open. So that's what happened.
But given your status, and that's a mild term, one would say, given your ubiquitous influence in the PPP over the decades when that thing happened, there would have been lifelong friendship molded in that party. Has there been a reconciliation? I mean, you're gone, people move on, but has there been a reconciliation? If people said, look, looking back at it, no man, that should not have happened.
Yeah, there has been a reconciliation of sorts. I would say there has been a reconciliation. I'm not bitter. That's a past. I can't afford to be bitter. Bitter people are not pleasant. So I'm not bitter about the past, and I'm on terms with people like the president and Bar Jagdev, the vice president. I don't see them. I'm not in touch with them and all of that. But whenever I happen to see them, and the other comrades about, we pleasant. We have exchanged pleasantries.
But a political party always have people who contributed in heroic way, and they move on, and they remain these symbolic influencers. When it happened, were there people in the diaspora and aged people who said, no, you can't do this to Ramkarran? And did they intervene?
Nobody, as far as I know, intervened. I mean, Ramkarran, who was then the president, made an effort to communicate with me. They got some people overseas to contact me, and they were in regular contact with me from the time the letter went in. The letter went in mid-morning on Saturday. I wrote it on Saturday morning, and I got my then daughter-in-law who was going to town to take it down at about mid-morning. So from then on, I had people from overseas, friends and family and so on, calling, and they didn't broadcast it very far, just limited. After they got the letter, there was a limited outreach to people to talk to me. So people were in contact with me, yeah.
Wives are the voices behind what politicians do. Didn't Janet Ramkarran advise you what to do?
No,
she insisted to go back.
She didn't ask. She didn't ask me to do anything. It's a day that I remember very well. I was very hurt and it was very painful. So I came home. The meetings on Fridays, executive meetings are held on Fridays after lunch. Actually, lunch is provided for us. We go about 1 o'clock, and it goes on to 4 or 5 o'clock, late in the afternoon. So, and I would come home at that time. But I left the meeting and came home that day at about 2:30, 3 o'clock. My wife is usually upstairs. So she heard the movement downstairs. Nobody was in. She heard the movement down. She came down, but she found me in the room, lying down in my lazy boy, and covered from head to toe.
Oh yeah, you said that in the interview before 2 years ago.
Yes. So she didn't know what she lifted up, and I wouldn't speak, and she didn't know what was wrong. So she phoned around to find out from people who were at the meeting. She thought I had a stroke. That's the first thing. So, but after she pulled it down and I looked up and saw, and she probably disabused herself of that notion. She then phoned around to find out what had happened. And she couldn't get anybody, but she got Komal Chand and Navin Chandrapal. And both of them came, because she thought I was sick. So they came out of fear that something was wrong to me. But by the time they told her briefly what vaguely. None of them were at the meeting. None of them was at the meeting. Neither of them was at the meeting. And they told her what they had learned very briefly. And nothing happened. I was in that position until dinner time, 7 o'clock. I had shower and dinner about 7:30, and one of my sons and his wife came for dinner. They came for dinner, they left. I didn't speak to anybody. I went upstairs and slept. Next morning, I didn't speak to anybody. My wife didn't speak to me. She didn't ask anything. And during the course of, She brought up breakfast for me upstairs. When I finished and she came for the plate, I told her I'm going to resign from the PPP. She said, okay. I don't think I was. The tone may have suggested that this was not a decision that was going to be reversed. So that happened. Now, my father was a stalwart in the PPP. My father had severe problems with the PPP as well during his lifetime. So
Not with Jagland, they were
not
close, they were buddies.
Oh, he had plenty problems with Jagland.
Okay.
Plenty. I used to hear him quarreling on the phone. So they were, he was he was a stalwart, but he was. We also had problems.
All right. Following that, you eventually formed the ANOG.
We didn't form ANOG, actually. We didn't set about to form a political party. There's a meeting which was called by one of the members to discuss the way forward, including Terence Campbell, to discuss the way forward. There are several people. I don't want to call a name because they're not people who are in the political eye and so on. But they're friends, people who know each other well. So at this meeting, and the meeting was hosted by Timothy Jonas. Timothy Jonas called the meeting. He called people who he knew. So we had a lovely dinner at his house and discussions. At the end of the discussion, lasting several hours, we decided that we were going to form a political party. Now, the theory behind the political party was this, that the AFC is going to collapse. This was the 2020 elections, right? We felt that by 2020, the AFC would collapse. They would lose all their support. And there was a group of support who didn't want the PNC, and some didn't want the PPP. And we felt that if those people are searching for a home, let us provide the home. That was the theory behind it. And that if we can get in and keep both political parties below 50%, we have a chance to influence the outcome of the political development of the country. The PNC got 47% of the votes in 2020. Now, the PNC, the maximum vote the PNC got in this era was in 1992, when it got 42% of the vote. After 1992, it got 31% one time, but all the rest of the time it came below 30%. Anyway, let us assume in 2020, the PNC got 42% of the vote again. The AFC would have got 7% or 5%. So it did not happen in 2020 that the AFC lost support in any significant way. The AFC kept its supporters, or the bulk of its supporters, in 2020, and that is why we didn't have a base to work on. So that is why ANOG failed so spectacularly. So that's my assessment. In 2025, finally, the AFC lost out.
Were there severe anti-PPP sentiments in ANOG that you can?
They were not. I wouldn't say they were severe. They were severe anti-PPP sentiments. I would say that the sentiment towards the PPP was not favorable. It was a bit uncomfortable for me because I spent my whole lifetime in the PPP, and to be in a group where you know, my former friends and colleagues were not looked upon with
favor.
with favor is a bit uncomfortable. But we had a job to do, which was to try and get 4 or 5 seats. So we concentrated on that.
3 years ago on this program, you said you were, I think it's 46. I can't remember, it's 46, but correct me. You said you were on page 46, correct me, of your memoir. If that's 3 years ago, you must have been around.
No, I haven't gone far. I'm still at page 50, near to page 60. I don't have the time, and with age brings loss of energy.
But there's a ghostwriter.
No,
Nascimento biographies being ghostwritten.
I like to write myself. I'm working on it, but it has to. I think the bulk of the work can only be done when I retire from employment. But I have a problem with my employment, my private practice. My partners don't want me to retire, so that's a problem. It's not that I have a problem with retiring, but.
What's your take on the PPP 192, 97, 2001, 2006? Lost plurality in 2011, but still was the government. Lost in 2015. And since 2020, 2025. You see that trend continuing, successive PPP victories, or do you see variables intervening that we may not know about?
They will have variables. Look, the PPP last election, the PPP declined in 2011. They had a minority government. They lost in 2020. So 2015. It cannot be argued, it cannot be said that the PPP will continue to hold power indefinitely. They can, but it depends on how they treat with, not how they treat, but how they treat with the supporters of the PNC who have left that party. Now, they can try to win that support. They won't win all, but they can try to win some of that support. Because look, the PPP, the Indian population is just below 40%. It was 39 and probably gone down to 38 or 37 now. 39 in 2012. It's probably gone. And not all Indians vote for the PPP. So, but they win elections. Means they get support from various sources, mainly the Amerindians, who keep them afloat. Now they have to get more sources of support. And the only significant source of support is from the African community. They can't get that from anywhere else. This election showed that they got some support. So a little bit more support from the African community. Now, the opportunity has now presented itself for the PPP to capture some of the votes of the disenchanted PNC supporters. And it's a hard job, but after the PPP left office and came out of office in 1964, around that time was 64 was the Wisma massacre. 64?
Me.
Shortly after 1964, two things happened in the PPP. They decided to return to Linden, and they decided to go in the Amerindian communities. Big decisions. PPP then starts to inch its way in Linden, slowly. In my time in the PPP, we always had a person from Linden on the Central Committee, always. And people like the young Neil Kumar was there from early years, you know. And those boys worked very slowly in very difficult circumstances, selling mirror, going to the market, eventually getting an organizer, and so on. The Amerindian vote was the same thing. Harry Nocta was the leader of the group of people who worked the Amerindian communities. And they went in Amerindian communities when illegally, when if they're found out, they'd be arrested by the police. All of that they had to go through. So, and the PPP eventually got Amerindian support and a little bit of support from Linden now and again. Similarly, they need to now start working on African votes. The other thing is that the PPP has to look at, I mentioned it in my article, but that depends on the PNC. The PPP is not going to have any favorable reaction to a suggestion that they should consider some kind of constructive arrangement with the PNC as regards governance if the PNC remains so implacably hostile. Now, it's difficult for the PNC to change its course, but if it continues in the same way, it will get the same result. If it continues in the same way, the marginalization, discrimination, hostility, aggression, and so on, that's been the result since 1992. That's been the policy since 1992. And it's getting worse. First there was ethnic cleansing, then there was apartheid, then there is, now there's what they call it, something against humanity, crimes against humanity. All these things are happening, and you have a police, you have the African Guyanese control the public service, they control the police, they control the army, they control. I see Henry writing, attacking Henry very frequently. I see Henry writing about African business people. True, Africans don't get business as much as Indians do. But Africans were never entrenched in the business community. Never, never. That's not the history of Africans. Africans came to the city, got involved in the professions, in the services, nursing, teaching, public service. That's their history. When Burnham came to office in the 70s, before an African person can invest in a business, Burnham nationalized the whole economy and created from the African community a whole range of bureaucrats managing the businesses. These were not businessmen, these were bureaucrats. Hazen Paris was made the head of Demerara Bauxite when he was a 28-year-old young man. But nobody would think of Hazen Paris as a businessman. Hazen Paris was a bureaucrat. So for the quarter century of Burnham's period in office, the African community were not directed to business. They were not steered. You don't direct, you steer them into the business. So how are you going to have an African business class? I would like to see an African business class. And the government should do, I think they're doing more now. The government should do as much as they can to encourage an African business class. But take the fact that there is not an African business class now. Henry calls it discrimination.
Right. Now, you talk about the PNC message and changing and so on. They have asked Campbell to be the lead in Parliament. I jokingly call him the shadow opposition leader. But two things about Campbell. One, he said his sole involvement in politics is to remove the PPP. And he seemed to have fallen into that PNC mold. Do you have high hopes for him assisting the PNC to come back from its devastation?
I don't. I know Terence Campbell. I don't know him with great depth, but I know him reasonably well. I don't believe that he has the. I don't believe that if Terence adopts the same policy that he has, that the PNC has now, it doesn't seem as if he's going in that direction. But if he does, he's not going to make any headway. When Corbyn brought Granger along to be the presidential candidate, the intention was Corbyn was going to be the opposition leader. But something happened along the way. Either he changed his mind or
there was an internal revolt, as the way I see it.
Or something. Something happened along the way. I don't know what, but Granger eventually became the opposition leader. He had made a public statement to that effect. So he eventually became the opposition leader. Now, I don't know if Terence Campbell's and Aubrey Norton's position will turn out the same way, if Terence Campbell will become the leader of the PNC. Now, he can't be the opposition leader, but he can become the leader of the PNC.
Well, he could if they...
But I don't see how Aubrey is going to rebuild the party. The party broke when he was its leader.
Yeah.
Somebody else has to rebuild it. But Terence is not going to be able to remove the PPP. That doesn't seem feasible. Certainly not within the near future. The PPP can fall up too. The PPP can make a mess too.
Ramkarran, on this program, someone you know well said, he started out by saying he was against the removal of Marxist-Leninist phraseology in the PPP's constitution. And from there, he just followed, justified by saying, I don't think there is a huge interest in projecting working class priorities in the government. Do you share that sympathy?
No, I don't share that sympathy. I think the time has come to revise the Constitution. The time had come to revise the Constitution of the PPP. And I think that the Marxism-Leninism ought to have been replaced. Vice President Jagdeo talked at the time about getting rid of the isms. But, we're under capitalism. He hasn't gotten rid of that ism. And Freddie, as a political scientist, very well that everybody has an ideology. Just that it's not articulated. Now, there should have been something there about the functions of the PPP, the role of the PPP, and the role of various sections of our community. And emphasis could have been placed on the objective of improving the lives and conditions of the working people, while at the same time allowing private enterprise, the purpose of which is to serve the development of the country. So I once offered Vice President Jack, they probably wouldn't remember, jokingly of course, would you like me to revise the Constitution for you? I was very unhappy that they left democratic centralism in the Constitution. And I wrote publicly about it, I spoke publicly about it. The system of elections by way of democratic centralism should have been removed. Because it allows the controlling of, it makes it easier to control outcome of elections.
Outcome of internal elections.
Outcome of internal elections.
And what you replace it with? One man, one vote?
People contest individual positions. Leader, general secretary,
okay. That
committee
too.
members, like the PNC has it, like it's done in the PNC.
Okay, but individual positions, but still by delegates.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
elected by delegates.
Oh, okay.
Two prodigious names in the PPP at the time would have been you and Nagamutu. Is there, because of the decades or two you served in the PPP, is there an ongoing friendship? Is there, or is there a distance in the relation?
There's a very big distance.
Okay.
I meet Moses rarely, but we have a conversation whenever we met. The last time we met was at the funeral of the late Justice Prem Prasad, and I saw him there, and I went and sat near to him. We sat there longer than an hour, and we conversed during the period of that hour, from time to time. And he told me he mentioned something about me in his book. I bought the book, but he said he made an apology to me in the book. I bought the book, but I saw a sentence that didn't mean very much. So,
when Nagamutu left the PPP, he was heavily courted by the AFC. Did you have a similar experience? Did anybody from the AFC reach out to you? Were you ever tempted to have a discussion with them?
No, nobody courted me from the AFC.
But
Well, I was asked once to, while discussions were going on between the PNC or PNCR and the AFC, that's David Granger and the David Granger led PNC and the AFC. This would have been before the
2015 election.
the 2015 elections. What's the accord name? The Cummingburg Accord. Before the Cummingburg Accord was signed. Not long before, a week or two before. I was the function of the Canadian High Commission, and Kamaraj Ramjatan came up and said he wanted to see me. So I said, sure, when you want. He said, soon, as soon as possible. I said, well, come to my office Monday morning, 9 o'clock. This was a Friday or something. So Raphael Trotman was at the function as well. So later on, Raphael came up and said, Kamaraj spoke to you? I said, yes, we're meeting on Monday. The meeting was Kamaraj and Raphael to meet with me. Moses was also at the function. Moses didn't say anything. So I don't know if he knew about the meeting or not. I can't say. But he didn't say anything. But they didn't come. And a few days after, a week after, the accord was signed. But I can't say that was an invitation to anything. But They did not invite me.
I hear you, but where do you think your mind and person and personality on that issue, let's assume you were invited, could it have been that you could have been persuaded?
Oh, that I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
I love that answer.
Granger once told Kaz Khan, the late Kaz Khan, who told, I'm speaking after Kaz Khan, I don't know whether it's true or not. Kaz Khan told me that Granger once told him that he would work under Ralph Ramkarran.
You didn't. The question was two part, and I think you honestly concentrated on the first part, which is removing Marxism, Leninism. But Ramkarran went on to say he don't think there's any huge movement in the government towards putting working class interests on the front burner.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, Freddie, because look, the budget for education and health and social services have expanded by multiple times. The oil resources that are coming into Guyana are being used for these purposes. And that is what any government that is interested in the welfare of the people would do. I don't think they're doing anything different. The working people, therefore, are at the forefront of what is going on. Look at the housing drive. Guyana probably has the best housing drive in the entire world.
Probably the fastest growing too.
Yes, the housing drive for people benefits. You know, I have a voucher on my desk. I was clearing up my desk yesterday. I have a voucher for $10,000 for the hospital.
For tests, blood tests.
Blood tests and all these things, and I haven't used it yet. I hope it's still valid. But I don't agree that the government has that the government is not putting the interests of the working class first. Poverty is a very difficult thing to get rid of.
Yeah.
Unemployment is a very difficult thing to cure. But there's still people unemployed and there's still people poor. It's not going to change easily. But
I've left this for the last, the operator signal 5 minutes left. This is a ticklish question, so if you want, we can pass on. Do you think, as an experienced, educated political activist the past few decades, do you think often Ali's personality, substance, character played a part in the PPP's election results?
it could have done. It's difficult to say, but it could have done. He's very much liked. He's very much an outgoing, extroverted person. He's easy to talk to and to engage with. So personality is important, and I think that his soft touch, his ebullient approach, I think that has helped in his election victory.
Do people from the PPP, younger people from the PPP, reach out to you for advice and to navigate the PPP?
I have no contact with anyone from the PPP on a regular basis. And no one reaches out to me for any purpose, except that I work for the government. I'm associated with the government in relation to the Guyana-Venezuela border issue. As you would appreciate, that's not something that gets publicity. But that's I'm on the Ministerial Advisory Committee, and that is an activity that that goes on regularly. Now, but outside of that, but what happens with me and the PP? If I meet,
Okay.
or if I meet old comrades or even young comrades, if I go anywhere where those people are, if I meet them anywhere, the response is usually overwhelming. If I meet a lot of people on the street, on the road, African, Indian, women, I'm very happy with the way I'm greeted.
In the ideological spectrum of politics and philosophy, the wide spectrum, how would you describe, and I'm using present tense now because this is the 4th time you've been on this program, and I have seen nothing in you that tells me you're not lucid and you're not capable of first-rate analysis. What spectrum are you on now and when you were in the PPP all those years? Left wing, liberalism, quasi-socialist, straight socialist, quasi-Marxist, a combination of capitalist perspective with Scandinavian socialism, Manly's democratic socialism. What? Manly meaning Michael Manly.
Or Mao Zedong.
Well, Freddie, as you know, like Marxism, socialism, like Christianity, has all the facets that you have just mentioned. So it's very difficult to capture one, but this is what I can say about how I think about myself. I belong to the radical left tradition. I've always belonged to that tradition, and I still remain there. Now, 1989 and 1991 have caused all of us who adhered to that tradition to think out how those events have affected us. And I have thought out, and why I have moderated many of my views and so on. But I still am firmly within the radical left tradition as manifested by Bernie Sanders, AOC, Jeremy Corbyn,
That's one of my favorites.
Mamdani.
Yeah, Mamdani is.
Though one, of course, doesn't agree to everything
George Galloway.
they do. Well, Galloway is a bit of a... No, one fellow, Norman Finkelstein, who I listen to on YouTube from time to time, who also has the same kind of orientation that I have. But he was saying that Mamdani has to he has to
Tone down.
he has to deal with the LAPD, not LAPD, NYPD. He has to deal with the NYPD. But you know, people like armchair socialists like me and Mamdani and Finkelstein and all of these people, there's a reality of life that activists who become leaders have to face, you know. It's not all that easy to deal with the NYPD.
The operator signal, our time has come, and I'm going to do something unusual in journalism. I'm going to leave on a negative note, and I don't know how you will take this because we're supposed to leave on a positive note. You are making Guyana's historiography poorer by postponing that autobiography. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. I want to assure you, though, that I work on it regularly. At the moment...
3 years you were...
No.
3 years
At the moment I have begun, after leaving it for a long time, I have begun recently to revise what I have written and reformulate it. A lot of things come up from time to time. I'm reading this book, Forrest Burnham, by a guy named Lewis, which I think you've read.
Lewis, yeah.
Now, made a small mistake, a small thing, but so should I correct it? He said Barnum was a member of the Political Affairs Committee. Barnum was not a member of the political. He didn't say where he learned that from. He just made a statement. Barnum was not a member of the Political Affairs Committee. So you pick up all these bits of information that you need to revise and to look at.
You,
But
you have to finish that thing.
I'm dealing with it still.
We were broadcasting on Ramkarran Street in the Bel-Air house of Ralph Ramkarran. That street is named after Mr. Ramkarran's father. Thanks for being with us. This has been an interesting hour of someone who is one of Guyana's most experienced political practitioners. Once again, thanks to Mr. Ramkarran for having us home, and thanks to my co-host Leonard Craig and my operators. We will see you on Friday evening. As I normally say, catch you later. Bye-bye.